8:30 a.m. and we will call this meeting to order. We will start off with a prayer and our pledge. Anthony, would you please come forward?
Good morning. You are all familiar with the phrase, we have an app for that. And as a proud member of the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement, one of the things I love about the Episcopal Church is we have a prayer for that, just about anything, including local government and sound government. And they're short. And so I'm going to offer the prayer for local government, followed by a verse for sound government. Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this city, San Angelo, Texas, the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people through Jesus Christ our Lord. Teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens, that they may elect trustworthy leaders and make wise decisions for the well-being of our society, that we may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. Amen.
And today to lead us in prayer is Bryce Bunnell. He is in the 4th grade at Santa Rita. Bryce, come on up here.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Our first proclamation this morning will actually be accepted by 3 different groups. One by the City of San Angelo Health Services, if you will come forward. Tom Green County Health Department, Neighborhood and Family Services, if someone would come forward for that. And Goodfellow Air Force Base Preventative Medicine. The week of April 2nd through the 8th, 2018 is National Public Health Week, and the theme is Healthiest Nation 2030, Changing Our Future Together. The public health community protects and improves the health of all people and works to help communities be great places to live, work, and play. The public health community plays a crucial role in promoting good health and greater longevity for the citizens of San Angelo by working to immunize people against disease, tracking and tracing communicable disease, providing STD services, identifying and controlling environmental health hazards, infectious and vector disease, providing rabies control measures, improving the health of mothers and children, and promoting healthy behaviors such as increased physical activity, good nutrition, and smoking cessation. Public health professionals develop new strategies to detect and control disease outbreaks, address emerging environmental contaminants, provide valuable information to people, prepare for large-scale emergencies, and promote healthy communities through active living plans. Improving the health of those experiencing inequality, including San Angelo's citizens of color, immigrants, LGBTQ communities, and people with disabilities, will result in improved health for all. National Public Health Week provides the focused opportunity to tell the story of public health as it helps to build and sustain safe and healthy communities for the city of San Angelo and beyond. And Action by community leaders to provide funding and implement policy changes that promote the community health plan goals of healthy eating, active living, reduced poverty, improved access to health care, and mental health care will make our community a healthier place to live for current and future generations. Now, therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of April 2nd through the 8th, 2018, as Public Health Week in San Angelo, Texas, and call upon the people of San Angelo to observe this week by helping our families, friends and neighbors, co-workers, and leaders better understand the value of public health and adopt preventative lifestyle habits in light of this year's theme, Healthiest Nation 2030.
I'm going to go ahead and say a few words. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Management, for the proclamation and recognizing the importance of public health plays in the lives of our citizens. While the community may not always see the work done by local public health, the people of this community lead healthier lives and are safer because of the work done by the local health department and by all these other departments represented here today. Public health, its laws, regulations, and policies is key to preventing, detecting, and stopping the spread of diseases such as measles, tuberculosis, foodborne illnesses, mosquito-borne illnesses, and rabies. It's protecting children and adults from infectious diseases through immunizations. Public health in San Angelo is providing access to safe and healthy foods for women and children through WIC, clean neighborhoods through code compliance, rabies prevention through animal control. It's enforcing laws and regulations pertaining to restaurant inspections, public health nuisances, and smoking ordinances through the environmental health. It's regulating water and sewer treatment through our water department. It's ensuring kids have a safe place to play through our recreation department. Most importantly, public health is tracking, investigating, and stopping disease and other public health threats, such as foodborne illness, HIV/AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases through our nursing department. And in coordination with other community partners, such as Goodfellow, it's developing and exercising emergency plans and responding to disasters through public health preparedness. Public health is all of these things and so many more things. Again, thank you for recognizing us today. And also, just to say that Brent, Casey, and I are co-chairing the Mayor's Wellness Partnership, and so we wanted to present you with your own T-shirt. Oh, and I think Ben...
Yes, he is. Turn around. Turn around this way. Come on, girl.
I'm sorry. Benjamin Cruz wanted to say a few words too, so please.
Don't have anything written down, but thank you again, Sandra, City Council members, Mayor, for having us here to celebrate the proclamation for National Public Health Week. It's a privilege to be able to work alongside our civilian counterparts at the health department here at the Goodfellow Air Force Base. It's we have our own little mini health department. So everything that Sandra read off, as well as the mayor, we offer most of those services as well. And our population is a dynamic population. We have people that work on base, that live in the community in San Angelo, as well as with people that live in San Angelo that come on base for a different variety of services. So in that respect, we have a shared responsibility to be able to protect the health and well-being of the citizens of San Angelo. And again, for public health, it is a joint venture. So we all have a role to play in public health, whether it's ensuring children are immunized, getting out and exercising, steps. Probably everybody, a lot of people have Fitbits to keep track of that stuff. But there's a lot of things that we can do for prevention and education. So again, it's not only a public health week, but it's also a week that we can all celebrate and do our part. So again, thank you for inviting us here to celebrate National Public Health Week.
I wasn't going to speak, but again, thank you. I really can't add more to what Sandra added, but I do want to let people know that we have programs out there not only dealing with the health of individuals, but the health of the community and the health of neighborhoods. Things like affordable housing programs, animal services, code compliance efforts. So we encourage everyone to go online, read up on our services, and call us if you need assistance. Thank you.
Do we have people here for Angelo State University? If so, if you would please come forward. Proclamation of I Chose Angelo State Month, accepted by our Angelo State University. Angelo State University and the community of San Angelo are partnering together in celebration of current students, future students, faculty, staff, and alumni who have chosen to participate in the auspices of higher education at Angelo State University. And Angelo State University, with an enrollment of 10,447 undergraduate and graduate students, is an integral part of the city of San Angelo and a citadel of higher learning in West Texas. And it employs 441 faculty members, 550 staff members, and 700 student workers who are a vital part of this community. And the university has graduated 46,320 students since its inception in 1965. And Angelo State University educational opportunities have grown to include 1 doctoral degree in physical therapy, 21 master's degree programs, 42 undergraduate degree programs, and over 100 majors and concentrations. And Angelo State University is this year celebrating its 89th graduating class. And the month of April 2018 will be celebrated as I Chose Angelo State Month at Angelo State University by current students, future students, faculty, staff, and alumni through campus events, social media, and local media outlets. Now, therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2018 I Chose Angelo State Month in San Angelo and call upon the citizens of our area to recognize this remarkable display of pride in our community and the comprehensive educational opportunities at Angelo State University.
So, Mayor, thank you so much for your continued support of Angelo State University, all of our city council members, and the employees of the city of San Angelo, and also the citizens of San Angelo, the Tom Green County area, and also the Concho Valley region. Without the support of this region and the city, Angelo State would not be the great institution that it is. So today, we really are here, one, to accept the proclamation, and two, we would also like to take a moment to introduce a few of our newest members to the Ram Fam at Angelo State that will be attending Angelo State this fall. We also have several of our staff members, and I will introduce them as they present shirts to our new Ram Fam members. Will the incoming ASU students come forward as I call your name? And the first one that we have is from Central High School, Mackenzie Hall. Congratulations, Mackenzie. Next, from Lakeview High School, we have Henry Nikias, and Jeff Sessick, our Director of Enrollment Management, will present Nick with a T-shirt and certificate. From Cornerstone Christian School, we have Mara Ruthenbeck to be presented a certificate and a T-shirt by Kimberly Adams, Director of Development and Alumni Services. From Grape Creek High School, Tony Valdez to be presented a certificate and a T-shirt by Dr. John Wagner, who is the Dean of the Freshman College and Center for Academic Excellence. From Wall High School, we have McKenna Klimbrick, and she will be presented a certificate and a T-shirt by one of our own students, Nicholas Lambert. We also have a great partnership with Howard College, and today we will be presenting a T-shirt and certificate to Addison Jones to be presented by Brooke Flores, coordinator of the Carr Scholarship Recruitment Program. And if I could have anyone who has attended Angelo State or has earned a degree from Angelo State or currently attending Angelo State, stand up and raise your ram horns with us really quickly. Go Ram and Ram Bells. Thank you very much, Mayor. That's good, Daniel. That's good.
Eric, are you going to come forward for the proclamation of April as Alcohol Awareness Month? Come on. Alcohol is a primary factor in the 4 leading causes of death for ages 10 through 21, and almost 100,000 people die each year from alcohol-related causes, including drinking and driving crashes, and approximately 15 million drinkers in the U.S. are dependent on alcohol, and adolescents use alcohol more than tobacco or illicit drugs and begin drinking on average at 13 years of age. And young people who begin drinking before age 15 are 4 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence than those who begin drinking at 21. And alcohol abuse is linked to up to 2/3 of all sexual assaults and date rapes, and is a major factor in contracting sexually transmitted disease. And the typical American will see 100,000 alcohol-related commercials before he or she turns 18. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Alcohol Awareness Month in San Angelo, Texas, and call upon all in the City of San Angelo to support efforts to increase awareness and support for individuals and families coping with alcoholism and drug addiction in our community.
Good morning. My name is Ray Valadez. On behalf of the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council and the Contra Valley Cares Coalition, we'd like to thank you all and the Mayor and City Council for helping us to raise awareness this month for Alcohol Awareness Month. It's a great opportunity to increase awareness and understanding of alcoholism, its causes, effective treatment, and recovery. And it's also a great opportunity to start the conversation with young people about the effects and dangers of underage drinking. And some of our prevention team is behind us, and they're busy this month helping to spread that message and promote that message. And at the same time, we'd like to thank you all because you all play a great prevention role in our community, whatever role you may play in our community. And so thank you again for helping us to recognize this month as Alcohol Awareness Month. Thank you.
At this point, we will ask that everyone please turn off your cell phones. I did not remind you earlier, but obviously everyone has their cell phone turned off. So we will go into public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have anyone here today who would like to come to the microphone? If so, please state your name. Good morning.
Mayor and Council. My name is Paulina Levy. I am the Water Conservation Coordinator for the City of San Angelo. And I just wanted to remind everyone that we are now in our spring and summer watering restrictions. What that means is that residents should not water their yards more than twice a week, but still with a maximum of 1 inch of water. And they also should not be watering their yards between the hours of 12 noon and 6 p.m., which are the hottest hours of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. Any further public comment? If there's no further public comment, we will close the public comment section and move on to the consent agenda. To start with, item C has been pulled off from the consent agenda. Do I have requests from council to pull any other items from consent agenda? Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom? No, ma'am. Harry?
No, ma'am.
Lucy? Lane? Billy?
No.
Do I then have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All consent agenda items are passed. Exception of C, which of course was pulled from the agenda. We will move into the regular agenda. The first item, A, consider a resolution authorizing the negotiation and execution of airport personal property storage unit leases by the city manager or his designee and approving lease form. And I think we have Luis Estebal here today.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Before you, we have a draft lease This lease was presented to the Airport Advisory Board on March 1st of this year. It is a standard lease, and it's for T-hanger storage units. Due to the geometry of the T-hangers being a T, we have units at the end for storage, and that's what we have. The rates were approved back by council in December of last year, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have any questions from council? Any comments from council? Do I have a motion to
Move to approve as presented.
a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item B, consider approving a task order under RFQ ES-04-15 to Freeze and Nichols Incorporated in the amount of $111,827 for the design of a storm water detention basin for Avenue P drainage improvements and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents. And Russell, I think you're going to present today, and this is so exciting to have this on the agenda. So go.
All right. Well, good. Needs an I mean, what else do I need to say?
Exactly.
We're done, right? No. Just to kind of give everybody a There we go. All right. Just to give everybody a quick overview of what I'm going to be discussing today is just the project background, which apparently most of you know about, the scope of engineering services that will be provided with this RFQ, and the staff's recommendation. So, sorry, this is a little different than what I have here. There
you go.
Thank you. Okay, so back in 2000, we had a master drainage plan done by Freese and Nichols. In that drainage plan, they identified 57 key areas around town where we have drainage problems. Of those 57, they identified a top 25 in prioritization, and the Avenue P project was number 2 on that list. At Avenue P and the drainage area that comes to there is approximately 460 acres, and there we go, it's working now. Just to kind of give you an overview of what that looks like, Avenue P is over here to the east, Angelo State is over here to the west. Everything's flowing from the west to the east in this general direction. Here's US Highway 87, Chadburn Street is over here to the east, and that's a fairly large drainage area. We have, here's Johnson Street, Jackson Street. There's just a ton of area here that's contributing to the overall runoff that's coming to Avenue P. So during our evaluation, or we've done several iterations of solutions for this project. We looked at piping the stormwater underneath Avenue P and discharging it into the Red Arroyo. We looked at working with upstream owners to create detention ponds and to control the runoff coming downstream. We've also looked at purchasing homes along Avenue P and creating detention ponds in those areas to help alleviate the flooding. But finally in 2017, or December of 2017, we purchased some key properties that were basically the old El Mejor parking lot, where we're going to be looking at constructing detention ponds, and that's what this solution is today and what we'll be working on, and creating a set of final plans to construct that. So in that scope of services, they're going to be looking at our different alternatives with that drainage area, using earthen berms versus concrete retaining walls. They're going to be doing stormwater modeling, basically creating in a computer program different stormwater events and what that's going to look like. They're going to be designing the outlet to on the downstream side of the detention pond to regulate or control the stormwater coming out of there so that it's not exceeding the capacity of the street or Avenue P. And then finally, they'll be looking at the cost to construct that and looking at some different options of, okay, if the city crews do some excavation work versus having a contractor do it, things of that nature. We're going to be evaluating all of those different options. We've actually been working with Reese and Nichols on this some already, just to, just look at what we have and, help us establish the scope of services to this point. With that, staff recommends moving forward with this proposal in the amount of $111,000, or just a little bit over $111,000. And with that, do you have any questions?
What is the time frame for this task so that we better understand when actual work would be done?
The contract time frame on here is approximately 6 months, and we foresee that shouldn't take that entire time, but that's what we have on the contract.
Do I have other questions or comments from Billy?
Russell, not necessarily pertaining to the presentation, but you said there were 57 areas with drainage problems throughout?
Right, that were identified in 2000, or the year 2000, and that list is continuing to grow. So.
Okay, what I wondered, is there any way to identify it by street so that I could know in District 6 if there are drainage problems?
Sure, yeah, we can do that. We do have just a list of all of them, and it is identified by street or, subdivision, the common terms, and I can definitely get that to you.
Thank you so much.
You said that this was drainage item number 2. What was number 1?
Number 1 was actually on Bell Street at the crossing of East Angelo Draw on Bell Street, which will be addressed in the Bell Street project. So we're slowly plugging away.
Perfect. I think, Harry, you had a comment or a question?
A comment. I am so pleased that we're finally getting to this spot. This is one of the things that I ran on 2 years ago, trying to find a solution to the flooding issue down on Avenue P and those residents in there. And it's a campaign promise, really, but quite honestly, those people have been living with this for 40, 50 years, so it's something that needs to be done. But as everybody sitting up here heard me say last Thursday, the bottom line is we've got drainage issues all over the city, and we've got to find solutions for those. So as we go forward with this thing, I think we need to continue to look at each of these. And I think Billy's question as to drainage issues in her district are just as key. That would be in Tom or Tommy's or Lucy's or Lane's. There are a lot of them that we've got to take care of. So I move to approve as presented.
Second. All in favor? Any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving the RFQ for $111,827, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to item C, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A, Article A, 8.000, utility-related fees, A 8.007, water billing charges by amending the late fee. Allison, you're on.
Mayor, I'll actually be presenting on both items C and D, so if you want to go ahead and read D as well.
Sure. Item D is public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 11, Utilities, Article 11.02, Water and Sewer Systems, Section 11.02.036, billing by amending the payment due date. Okay.
Thank you. So what I have before you is the current ordinance. We have discussed this in a previous city council meeting in a first reading. When I brought that to you, we were only looking at amending this $25 set fee. And what we looked at was changing it to a percentage based, and we were looking at 18% as a late fee. Prior to the second reading coming back to you, we found a critical error in changing just this portion of the ordinance, and it has to do with this 28-day due date period. What happens is we bill monthly, and sometimes that 28-day and the bill date align together, and the bill doesn't have time to recognize that the customer was late the previous month, and it sends out that bill, and their late fee will actually show up the following month, so 2 months after they are late. It is frequent that we get customers that those that are pay a late fee quite often, that they'll see 2 late fees in 1 month, and it's because of this 28-day and the once-a-month billing aligned together. And so what we're having to do to assess the percentage-based late fee is spread that gap between when the bill is due and when the next bill is going to generate. So what we need to do is adjust this down to more like 25 days. So on the 25th day, the bill is due. At that nightly update, the system would recognize that that customer is late, assess the late fee, and then a few days later, when the bill generates, that late fee and the previous billing charges, everything is showing up in the month's bill. So what we're looking at is changing the ordinance to 25 days, and we've actually been able to reduce that 18% late fee down to 15%. What we're looking at in terms of revenue with 15% is approximately $1.2 million. This is what the revenue looked like when we were looking at an 18% late fee last time. And so the average late paying bill is $136, so they'd be looking at paying $20.48 with 15%. And you might ask why was it with 18% it was $1.2 million and now it's 15% for $1.2 million? Well, it has to do with the way we pulled the data initially, and with those late fees showing up months later versus the next month, the data set that we were pulled some inaccurate data, and so we feel very comfortable with this new data set that we've pulled, eliminated those discrepancies, and so we were able to dwindle that down to 15%, still with the same revenue requirement that y'all were looking at initially. This is just a chart to show how we compare to some other cities that we usually compare to. You'll see that while we are charging the largest percentage-based late fee, we're also allowing the most days, or tied for the most days to pay with Odessa at 25 days. Most of them are at the 15-day mark. So with that, we're proposing a late fee of 15% on the total new charges for the month of delinquency to be assessed at the 25th day, and we are put to begin this in June 1st. The reason for that is we're already in the month of April. Bills for April are already going out. We would like the month of May to advertise both on the bill, through social media, news outlets, those type of things, that come June 1st, you will now have 25 days to pay versus 28, because we recognize that some customers are very used to that 28-day cycle, and so we want to make sure we advertise that well, and so that would give us the month of May to do that. And this was taken to the Water Advisory Board in February of this month, and they unanimously recommended that I bring this to you for approval. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Lucy, I know that this has been an agenda item that you've been passionate about, so I'm going to ask you if you have any questions or comments.
Comments. It's great that you brought it down from 18 to 15%, and I'm sure, or let's hope everyone will be happy with that. And also how you got it to fix with the 25 days in there to where it will develop like you wanted to, like we wanted it to. So with that, I just want to thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Do I have other questions or comments, Harry?
Thank you. The only comment I've got to make is this will impact the city with about $300,000 that we have been typically getting that we will not get after June 1st, because we go from 1.5 to 1.2. So those individuals that are consistently late on their water bills that we've adjusted from 25 to 15% are being subsidized by the people that pay their water bills on time.
Do I have other, Tom? No. Lane? Billy?
Mayor?
Yes,
If
sir.
I could, since she's presented two ordinances, if you want to approve it with one motion, you can, as long as there's no changes. If there's going to be any changes to either ordinance, we'll need two separate motions.
It is now, we will open it up for a motion. Do I have a motion for either item C or D, or a combination of C and D?
I move to approve both C and D.
With a motion and a second on items C and D combined, I'm going to open it up for public comment. With no public comment, I will ask for a vote for items C and D combined. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Motions pass C and D combined. Item E is public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Exhibit A, zoning ordinance, Article 3, Section 310.E and Section 315.H.3.C, and Article 4, Section 411, removing the use of game hall as an individual use category and reclassifying it under indoor entertainment, retail sales, and services. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This changes a number of sections you see on this slide. I'm not going to read all through those, but it changes each of those multiple sections basically to remove the game hall use category. The game hall category covers arcades, bingo parlors, billiard and pool halls, and for some reason years ago that was separated into a separate use category. This came up as an issue with the mall rezoning. They're concerned that an arcade, which they actually already have in the mall, or something like a Dave & Buster's, those kinds of gaming facilities, under our current zoning ordinance, the way we treat these, actually wouldn't be allowed in that zoning district at the mall. As we looked at possibly making changes to that, I think what we decided was we really don't need that separate classification of game hall, so we're proposing to eliminate that. It will basically be folded under the indoor entertainment use that we have that covers a number of other things like bowling alleys, gyms, et cetera. And so we will just incorporate those things that right now are under game halls into that definition. That simplifies the ordinance, but it also will allow not only the mall, but any other property that has CG or CGCH zoning to have those without any special approval. That, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Define game hall for everyone.
Well, again, it's defined in the ordinance as arcades, bingo parlors, pool and billiard halls, those kinds of things. Again, I'm not really sure why those were separated out. I think in the past, at least, those may have been considered nuisance, potential nuisance type activities that should be treated differently. We think that that's no longer the case.
So we're basically removing the name game hall, but we're not reducing or extending in any way what was already included under game hall in terms of activities.
Correct. Everything under game hall is now being folded into the indoor entertainment category that we already have.
Okay. Do I have questions or comments from any of council members? With no comments or questions, I would ask for a motion.
Move approval.
A second.
Second.
Any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote on item E, eliminating the term game hall. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. The next item, F, is public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance, Chapter 1, Section 2, and Section 4, Subsection C, regarding appeals, Chapter 5, Section 3, Subsection A, and Subsection C, amending submittal requirements and meeting time for the Plat Review Committee, and Chapter 7, Section 1, amending submittal requirements. John?
Thank you. This is kind of a cleanup to the subdivision ordinance, and I'll just briefly mention what each of these items does. The first one is allowing interpretations to be made by the planning director with appeals to city council. Right now, the ordinance says anybody who wants an interpretation of the ordinance has to come straight to city council. What all of our other ordinances do is give some staff member the authority to make an interpretation, and then if the citizen disagrees with that, they can appeal to council. For some reason, the subdivision ordinance does not include that language, and so this adds that. That's really the way it's always kind of worked. I mean, somebody has to say, well, this is what the ordinance says. It doesn't give that authority to anyone in the ordinance. The next item is, you may recall a few months ago, we amended the ordinance that allows either the planning director or the public works director to appeal a plat variance. What we intended at the time was to allow either of those two directors to appeal a plat or a plat variance. But the way we worded the ordinance only applied to the variances, not the plat itself. So this would clear that up by adding both plat and plat variance. The rest of these are really changes to, for example, right now, our ordinance requires that to submit a plat application, you have to submit 13 copies. We don't need 13 copies, but the ordinance says you have to do 13 copies. So we're basically eliminating that requirement. We're not changing it to 3 copies or 1 copy. We're just changing it to say that they have to adhere to the checklist that's provided on the city's website. And so that way, over time, if we have different needs that change for a number of copies, that can just be changed through that checklist. Now, what our proposal is to run that by the Planning Commission before we change it, so that we're not out there just willy-nilly making requirements without having some oversight or review. But rather than write it into the ordinance, we'll just have that reference to the checklist. For some reason, the ordinance also says that the Plat Review Committee shall meet at this certain day and time. Well, we're not actually following that now, because they meet more frequently, and they don't meet on the same day that the ordinance says they should meet. And so again, it's just a cleanup. We don't think the ordinance should specify when that group should meet, but we just have them meet whenever it works for everybody. And again, that's an internal staff meeting of all the departments that review plats, so there's no real impact to the public on that. The same with the submittal deadlines. Those change based on calendar issues that come up, and it's so many days in advance of a planning commission meeting. And rather than have that directly in the ordinance, it will refer to the calendar that we put out each year on the city's website. And the same with all of the requirements. We have a list of everything that has to be included on a plat, from certain labels to a north arrow to signature blocks for certain people, the owner and the planning commission chair, and those sorts of things. Periodically, those will have to change for some reason, and rather than coming back with an ordinance amendment every time, again, that will just refer to the requirements as posted on the city's website. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of those if you have them. I will point out, you may have noticed that the Planning Commission vote was 3-2. They had a little bit of concern about allowing the Director of Public Works or the Planning Director to appeal a plat. Right now, the Planning Commission themselves are the final authority on plat, so if they approve it or deny it, an applicant has no ability to appeal to the applicant has the ability to appeal to council. If staff disagrees with that decision by the Planning Commission, currently we have no ability to bring that to you. And so this would change that. There were 2 commissioners who felt that it was more appropriate for that final decision to be at the Planning Commission.
Define interpretations.
There are some times where it's not clear what the ordinance says, or there's something that's not specifically addressed by the ordinance, so we have to make an interpretation or determination. Well, what does the ordinance mean in this circumstance? Again, we do that already today, and this just clarifies the process that if we make an interpretation that the ordinance in this section says X, Y, and Z, if a citizen or applicant disagrees with that, then they can appeal that to the city council.
Does the commission believe that their authority has been diminished by not being the final vote, or are there statistics that say that, in fact, 80% of their decisions are appealed? I mean, we have these commissions for a reason, so the question mark is, at what point do we start taking so much authority away from them that as a commission they no longer really feel like they have a strong vote?
Well, in 90% of the things they deal with, the zoning cases, those kinds of things, they are a recommending body to you, and you all make the final decision anyway. Plats are the one piece that state law gives you the authority. State law actually says city council decides plats, but you can delegate that authority to the planning commission. That's how it's worked in the past. Again, we've already changed the ordinance that would allow staff to appeal a variance to you all. But right now, it would not allow us to appeal a plat. If the planning commission denies a plat that we think should have been approved, we can't appeal that to you, only the applicant can. And likewise, if they deny or approve a plat that we don't think should have been approved, we would have no recourse.
Do I have other questions or comments from the council?
So the plat
Yes,
still has a
Lane,
chance.
would you like to make a comment?
Yes, the plat still has a chance to be appealed by the applicant.
Yes, that's already in place, and that would not change.
Billy?
So, John, even though you said the planning department would not have a recourse if the applicant appealed, if they appealed directly to the city council, would you have a chance at that time to state the planning department's position so that we could hear that? Because I would be, I hate not to have the opportunity to at least hear both sides. And
Yes.
so
Definitely, we would present that. The concern from our standpoint is if the planning commission approved a plat that we think is not legally sufficient to be approved, once they approve it, it's done. There's no ability to appeal that to you all to perhaps make a different decision.
does that happen regularly?
We were discussing that. I can't think of a single plat that we would have appealed over the last 2 or 3 years. So I don't think it's not going to become a regular occurrence. We just think in most other instances in our ordinances, both the applicant and staff have the ability to appeal the planning commission's decisions if there's a dispute.
Any further question or comments? Do I have a motion?
I make the motion that we approve as presented.
Is there a second? Thanks, Lucy. And any public comment?
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Terry Jackson, and I actually sit on the Planning Commission. And there were 2 of us that voted against this because, it gets to a point where if everything is brought back to the City Council and appealed by the Planning Department, perhaps they don't need us. And so that's the thinking behind that, and I'm welcome to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Terry? Billy?
I don't know that it's a question, but just a comment. What I heard John say, Terry, was that this doesn't happen that frequently.
They've not had the availability for it to happen at all. So in the past, if we did not approve a plat, then the person that brought that to the planning director, to the planning department, brought it to city council and appealed it. This would open up a bigger can of worms where if they, theoretically, not saying that they would or that this would happen, but if they decided they did not like a certain plat or didn't like the area or didn't like our vote, then they can just bring it here and appeal it.
And likewise, you could, if you didn't agree with what the planning director.
Not the commission, only the director.
The planning director would be the only
Not the
person who has
commission.
the ability. The planning commission does not. So if they say no, and the planning director doesn't think that lives within the realm of the legal issues, has the right to appeal it, and so would the person submitting the plat request.
Which right now, that person has the availability to do that.
So the only difference would be the planning director would now also have that ability to change that, to bring it to council.
On the plats right now, Billy, the way they work is the commission approves or disapproves it. If they approve it, then it goes into effect immediately. It does not come to the council for a vote.
Well, I guess, and I absolutely do not want to diminish in any way the planning commission's role in what they do, because I think y'all are a very valuable asset. My only concern is how does this council get to hear both sides of it? To me, a plat
Only in an appeal.
designation is, pretty significant to our city and pretty important. So I guess that's my
Right.
position.
Yeah, the only way
on-
it's ever been heard by the city council is with an appeal, and that would be by the proponent that brings the, if they are turned down, then that comes to city council.
And they still will have that opportunity,
Yes.
the applicant.
They still have that. Yes, ma'am.
But obviously, the planning commission was a little mixed in terms of their points of view because it's a 3-2 vote.
3-2
So it's a
vote,
very
yes.
close it's a close vote. So there were people on both sides of it that had opinions on
Yes.
this.
Thank you.
Do I have any further questions, comments from the public? Yes.
John, did I hear you say that this is the only portion this is the only ordinance portion that the planning department cannot bring back to the council?
It's the only one I'm aware of. Yeah.
So everything else is already in place for you to bring an appeal back if the planning commission feels like it's something that's significant?
Yes, now remember, like I said earlier, almost everything that the planning commission does is recommending to you all. The only ones that they're the final decision on, I believe, are the plats, the plat variances, and conditional use approvals. So the conditional use approvals and the variances now can be appealed by either the applicant or it's both the planning director and the director of public works for plats. And let me remind you one thing with plats. Plats are not like zoning in that they're discretionary. You decide, does it look good? Is it a fit for the neighborhood? By state law, plats are required to meet the definitions of things like lot size and do they have adequate water and streets. But if they meet all of those, they must be approved. If they don't meet all of those, they must be denied. And so it's not like it's not discretionary.
So it's a pretty black and white conversation, because earlier you mentioned about the legal issues that you might want to bring forward in terms of bringing it to council, even if the planning commission decided that they didn't want to approve it. It's all very cut and dry legally. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and
Because what would be the issues that would go outside the black and white perspective that would make it appealable?
It would really be a case where the planning commission approved a plat that we thought did not meet the legal requirements. That would really be the only circumstance in which we would appeal.
Say, for instance, they approved it and they were approved to do a certain plaque, and you're saying, oh, that's not good, that's wrong. You can't change it, is what you're telling us, correct?
Correct. Right now, unless the applicant appeals, once the planning commission makes that decision, it's final. That's right.
So it's the interpretations of the checklist. Is that what I'm hearing? You said the legal
Well,
Well, it's got to be a legal issue.
The
Right.
checklist is really what's required to be on the drawing of the plat, but it's what's in the subdivision ordinance, basically whether or not they meet all of the requirements of the ordinance.
This was supposed to be a public comment time period, not a council conversation. That was earlier. So with that, do I have any further public comment? Terry?
But I just thought of something else. With that being said, what we go by as a commission is everything that is presented to us in the presentation. So as far as I know, it's already legally in place when it's presented to us. Therefore, there should not be any issues with the plats that we approve, is the way I see it. Thank you. I'll try to sit down now.
Yes, Tom?
John? So my question here, and keep it in layman's term for me, and I see both sides of this, but what I'm thinking about is maybe if we run into an area where they're either trying to consolidate a couple plats or to separate some plats, and those might be in different zones, and those might be, where somebody wants to take it into one, whereas actually one plat might be commercial versus another one's light. Is that where this would come into play, where, is this actually pertaining? Because I see that happening. And
No, I actually don't think, because the way we do plats is we apply the standards for each zone to the part of the plat that's in that zone.
That would be the original zoning. You're asking about replatting it, Tom, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But when a property's platted, they're subject to the requirements of the zoning district at the time they plat. So if it was platted years ago under one zoning, and today it's a different zoning, if they come into replat, they then have to meet the requirements of the new zoning. I think the circumstances I could think of where this might be an issue is where we believe it does not meet the standards of the ordinance, and so we recommend denial of the plat. And the Planning Commission approves it anyway, disregarding what we believe to be a violation of the.
We've seen that on a couple that S&K brought here where they were wanting to pick up like the street or the back alley.
Well, that's the variance, and now that we already do have the ability to appeal that, and you saw one of those not too long ago. And so we already have that ability. If they're asking not to build the road to the certain width or something like that, we already have the ability to do that. This would be to appeal the entire plat itself.
Daniel, I think you want to comment.
Yeah, I think Terry makes a really good point. I know that the Planning Commission acts in a manner that they want to do everything in a legal fashion. I do appreciate that. As far as recommendations, I think if anything, this is more kind of a checks and balance to make sure if we have a question about an item that may not be by ordinance, I do feel we should have some type of ability to take a closer look at that. But again, I think it just kind of sets up a kind of a checks and balance in place to make sure that we're assuring that it does meet the law requirements.
Okay. Elaine, do you have a question or comment?
I fully understand checks and balances, but I don't want to be able to take all the authority away from our commissions and boards to where there's loopholes covered up every which way that can be appealed to us. That's taking authority away from our appointees that we trust to make those decisions for us. So
I'll just remind you that almost every other board and commission, with a few exceptions, their decisions are recommendations to you all, that you make the final decision. It's very rare. This is one of the few cases where they have the final decision, and let's say they make a decision that you all think, hey, that we think they made the wrong decision. You would have no recourse to have that brought to you all for reconsideration of it, because there's simply no authority to do that.
would this seal the hole up to where this would be the final checks and balances with the Planning Commission on appeals of any such?
Yes, it would mean any item that they consider could be appealed.
If I'm not mistaken, we have a motion and a second on this item as presented. So we need to take a vote on this item as presented. So all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? 1 nay, passes 6-0. 6-1, sorry. Item G, public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A, Article A, 8.000, utility-related fees, A, 8.020, rebates by amending the discussion of biannual rebates. Allison?
Hello, Mayor and Council again. What I have before you today is a discussion that you hear every April and November. What's on the slide or the presentation before you is how the ordinance currently reads. Every April and November, it is required to be on a city council agenda that we bring the water operating fund balance to you to discuss about giving rebates to our customers. It is council's determination to determine if the rebate is appropriate. The rebates occur in May or in December or as soon as practicable. And council determines the amounts and methodology for providing the rebates. What we're doing today, we will be discussing the fund balance information, but we are looking at amending this ordinance to change so that you could allow for periodic reviews of the utilities fund balance, and it would be at City Council's direction versus just April and in November. Just to go over a brief history of this ordinance, it was adopted in 2006. Shortly after its adoption, rebates were granted to customers in the form of waiving the base fee for 2 months. And then in another instance, they reallocated fund balance dollars to pay for some capital improvement projects. So for the past 12 years, this has been on the agenda twice a year, but these are the only two instances, and really only the first one to me classifies as a rebate to customers. The other one really was just a budget amendment that moved fund balance dollars to pay for capital improvement, so it wasn't really a rebate to customers. So I feel like this ordinance gives a false sense of hope to residents when they see it on the council agenda twice a year that they're going to be giving a rebate, and when in reality we've really only done that one time. Right now, we're looking at the end of this fiscal year at an ending fund balance of $4.4 million. The 75-day fund balance goal is $5.9 million. This is in line with the rate plan. We weren't expected to hit that 75-day fund balance goal until year 4 and 5 of the rate plan. So even though we aren't at that fund balance goal, we are on track with the rate plan that has been adopted. The utility has some very large capital needs that you all are very aware of. We've got some water supply projects, hopefully in the near future, both short-term and long-term. We have some much-needed capital improvements to the water treatment and wastewater treatment facility. Both of those are very expensive projects. And we talked about this at the last strategic planning workshop, but I just want to bring it up one more time. As we are trying to keep up with the street program in terms of replacing water and sewer infrastructure underneath that street, we are paying for we are cash funding that portion of the street program in terms of with the Bell Street project, it was a $22 million project, but $12 million of that was to replace water and sewer. So this year we are spending a lot of money in terms of capital improvement, and these needs are not just in Bell Street, they're citywide. And so we also have water and sewer line replacements that will fall outside the street program that will also be big projects. So I didn't want to bring this up just to make it doom and gloom, but we do have a lot of very expensive projects coming on, and I think it's essential that we have a healthy fund balance and that we don't give this idea to customers that we're going to be giving rebates when really we need to be focused on these priorities for the utility. So with that, we recommend that the financial condition of the water operating fund be reviewed on a periodic basis to determine whether a rebate to water customers is appropriate. It would still be at your discretion and when that would be appropriate. And if a rebate is determined to be appropriate, the same requirements as were in the ordinance previously, City Council would determine the methodology and the amounts to be rebated to customers. So that is still all in the ordinance. And with that, I'll take any questions you have.
What do most cities use as their fund balance in terms of days?
I believe the rate consultant provided us that the 75-day fund balance goal is kind of a common number for most utilities and operations.
Good morning.
Mr. Valenzuela, Tina Dersky, Director of Finance. The GFOA does recommend a fund balance goal of 90 days of operating expenditures. We have set as a goal for our city a 75-day fund balance goal for the water fund.
So based off of the recommended 90, we live with 75, and we're still underneath the 75 days.
Yes, ma'am.
With our current fund balance, and we tend to be right now in a drought, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have questions or comments for Allison on this issue? Billy?
Allison, did I understand you to say on one of the previous slides that the infrastructure that's being done under the new roadways is pay-as-you-go? Is that, and we're not issuing any debt for that?
The issuing of debt has been for the street portion of the projects. We are paying as we go with the water and sewer infrastructure.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And that's, of course, with the exception that you would say, like on the Bell Street, where there's $12 million of water and sewer line that's part of that project. Because people, and I want to repeat that, because people keep saying, I can't believe council approved a $22 million reworking of Bell Street. They don't understand that there's 12 million of that 22 million that's actually water and sewer lines. It's not a $22 million road project, and that's important that we note that. Do I have further questions or comments from Allison, for Allison? Are you asking that we re-review, bringing it back on an April and November basis?
No, I am, the ordinance change will remove the April and November requirement and just be at the council's direction and periodic review.
So there will be no bringing up about a rebate in April and November, correct?
Yes, ma'am, unless you ask for it.
And we certainly can ask for it if we feel it, but right now we're in a drought. We're under our 75-day. And would you re-review those projects that need to be funded or taken care of?
Yes, ma'am. We have short-term and long-term water supply needs, capital improvements to the water treatment and wastewater treatment, street program, the biggest one currently, Bell Street, College Hills to be coming up, and water and sewer line replacement that is outside the street program, such as the Sulphur Draw project, and we've got some other water line projects that do fall outside the street program.
Do we have an expected dollar amount on the capital improvements needed on the water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities?
Those are being evaluated with the water supply engineering feasibility study at this moment, depending on what we do with the wastewater and what water source we bring in will drive those capital needs at the plant.
Thank you. Do I have, yes, Harry?
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the citizens understand that the 7 people up here are still looking out for their interests. So I would suggest that we, even though we're going to take out the April, November from the ordinance, that we have you come back at least twice a year and review these things so the citizens understand that we're doing due diligence on this.
Yes, I don't want the conversation to end just because we remove the April, November. We still need to be communicated to about where we stand on the water fund balance.
Okay, and if I could suggest, I think bringing it up at the November timeframe is the most appropriate because that is when we close the fiscal year. April, really, we haven't even hit our busiest season in terms of sales with water. And so in April, we really don't know what kind of summer is going to bring in terms of those revenue projections. So I think November, if you're okay with that, would be the most appropriate of the 2 months to bring that back.
Sounds great. With that said, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve this.
Second. Do we have any public comment on this presentation? With no public comment, I will ask for a vote on item G. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Item H, second reading and adoption of amending Appendix A fee schedule for the following ordinances. Article A11.000, fire and rescue service fees. Section A11.001, service fees. Subsection F, ambulance transport transfer fees to adjust said fees. Tina?
Good morning again. This is the ambulance fee item that you asked us to bring back after we had received more information from our consultant. We have received that information, and so these slides have been updated to reflect that information. We're starting out with the ALS Type 1 emergency. The current fee is $830. The proposed fee at $875, and the cost of service is $1,305 for that one. Do you want me to go through all of them? Okay.
Yeah.
The ALS Type 2 emergency, the current fee is $955. We're proposing an increase to $1,010 with a cost of service of $1,889. BLS emergency, the current fee is $770, proposing at $810 and a cost of service of $1,099. BLS non-emergency, the current fee is $600, proposed at $630 with a cost of service of $687. And the mileage fee for the per patient mile, the current fee is $10 with a proposed fee of $12 and a cost of service of $16.53. Transfer out of the city but still in county, the current fee is $100, proposing a fee of $150 with a cost of service of $139. And then transfer out of the county is a current fee of $200 with a proposed fee of $250 and a cost of service of $252. Standby services, the current fee is $340, which is $85 per hour after 4 hours. The proposed fee is $400 with $100 per hour after 4 hours, with a cost of service of $402 with $100 per hour after 4 hours. And that concludes the fees that we're presenting. We can go back through them if you'd like.
Start with the first one. Do I have questions or comments from City Council? All right, on type 1 emergency, if the current fee is $830 and we're proposing $875 and the actual cost of service is $1305, I think we need to look at that as being a little higher proposed fee. My comment. Lane, do you have a question?
I have a comment. While you were going through the numbers, I was doing percentages on the calculator.
Yeah, they're all between 5 and 5.5% that we're proposing. The
was-
intent was not to increase drastically all at one time, but we can certainly increase these numbers as you would direct us to do.
I was doing the proposed fee to cost of service of what percentage the proposed fee is to the cost.
Right.
This one right here is at 67%. Some of them were closer to 80. Can we get a consistent percentage if we're not going to do the cost of service? Can we get a consistent percentage of the proposed fee to what it actually costs?
Sure, that's your prerogative. Like I said, right now, all of the proposed increases are between 5 and 5.5% that we proposed. So.
Tommy, you had a question or comment?
Didn't we agree last meeting that we were going to look at this annually now because we were as far below the cost of service? So I think what the chief had mentioned to us initially when presented and then on second reading last time as well, that we didn't want to create sticker shock for the citizens, and so we would look at it annually. So that just FYI, I guess, to remind the council what we agreed to last time, or we may not agreed to, but we talked about.
As you know, the larger the number, the lesser the percentage. So the reality is I think that we can, in my mind, bump a few of these up a little bit more and still be without sticker shock. Because if you have a current fee of $830, proposed fee of $875, but a cost of service of $1305, I think this one could already go up just a little bit more.
Let me ask the chief a question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you may, Tommy.
Is there any percentage that is that would be valid in your judgment that your cost of service goes up annually by how much, or is that really not a fair question?
Part of that is going to depend on the infrastructure that gets put in place. As we build new stations, all that gets depreciated into these costs also. The training center, the cost of new ambulances, all those kind of things are going to get depreciated in there, and they're going to drive some of those numbers up.
We have a new station.
New station will come online at the end of September, hopefully.
We have a new truck coming, new ambulance coming.
Yes. So all these things, as you replace, like 2 of the other stations that we replaced, they were probably on the books for $100,000 because they were built in the 60s versus, $2 to $3 million when they were built just a few years ago.
May I ask and repeat, if you would, when was the last time we increased these fees? And do you have the comparison of other cities at this point? I think in one presentation we had the comparison to other cities in terms of what they charge.
We did, and I don't believe these are on this slide right now. They were on the first one that we presented back at the 1st of March.
I don't have those slides with me at this time, but they are in your background if you have your background information with you.
Yeah, let's pull that up. And again, repeat, when was the last time we raised these fees?
2012, they went up substantially.
So
then.
we're 6 years from the last time that we increased these fees.
Mayor, some of those are city operated, some of those are privately operated.
Yeah.
As far as to Councilman Carter's comment, we could go back, and if council gives us a percentage they'd like them set to, we can go back and do those calculations and bring those up to, say, 80% of cost or whatever the council deems that they would like to get to at this point.
Mayor,
Daniel.
If I may, I know that we look at the numbers and percentage-wise, as Lane mentioned a while ago, that's a huge jump up. Now, we are talking about coming back every year until we get it to a level that we know it will be right. Let's say over the next 3 to 4 years, if he comes back every year, we may divide up the difference over a 4-year period and say we'll make our adjustments accordingly. Because this would be, this is significant. This is a huge number right here. But again, we don't want to give our citizens a sticker shock, but we also know that if we don't adjust it enough, then we'll be struggling year after year. So even if we decide that we can divide it up over a 3 to 4 year period, as the chief comes up here, we can adjust those numbers upward as well. But at this point, I definitely would not recommend going too close to that 1305 at this point.
Could we cycle
Comments
through
on,
those?
do you have a comment, Brian?
And one of the reasons you see some of these large differences, those runs are different categories. Those runs that have those big differences are higher levels of care. And there's, the federal government sets a weighting system called relative value units. So they base everything off of base transport where you're basically doing nothing. And then after that, there's multipliers for each of those categories of runs. So that's one reason you see like that one. That's the second highest type of run that you make. ALS2 would be the highest. We don't make a lot of those runs, but you saw it went from what we charge from $955 to the cost of that run being nearly $1,900, and that's one of the reasons. It'd be like going to the ER for getting stitches or going there to get a surgery. I mean, that's the difference you're talking about.
Lane, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just doing some calculations. Can you cycle through these real quick to each one?
Continue through all of them, or do you want me to stop?
Yeah, each one of them. I'm just trying to find a consistent basis.
Like Chief Dunn said, we could increase it to a percentage of the cost of service, or we could, instead of going around the 5% increase mark, we could do a different percentage increase as well.
And you're saying right now the slides that you're presenting us, it's all based off of a 5.5% increase?
Between 5 and 5.5, most of them, yes.
So far I have BLS and then ALS type 1 and 2. Is there a fourth?
No, that's...
Well, then you had the other categories
Then you had
of
the mileage. And
yes.
So far type 1 is 67%.
ALS type 2 is proposed at an increase of 1.6%.
How much?
Right now, 1.6%.
And why did you make a decision to do 1.6% versus 5.5%?
That's more than 1%.
More than 1%.
I'm sorry.
How much is it?
Do the math right then.
Mayor, it would also depend on where you want to end up. What is your goal for where those fees ultimately end up? If our goal is to exactly cover cost 3 years from now, then there are multiple ways to get there. But Daniel's talk about smoothly increasing those rates so we don't create a crisis for anybody, I think that holds a lot of water.
I don't think we want to create a crisis for anybody. On the other hand, we have fees that don't cover cost of service, and we haven't raised fees since 2012. So you're 6 years in the hole or 6 years without any increases. So I think there needs to be, once again, a consistency in terms of what we're doing. And we might not ever get up to the cost of service, but let me also repeat that as far as I know, health cost services continue to increase, and one of the highest increases people are getting in their lives. So even though we don't want to do that, I could assume that these numbers in terms of cost of service, if we look at it next year and the next year and the next year, they're going to go up at a faster rate than we're going to increase the costs, because that's what's happening with health care. So with realism attached to this conversation, we don't want to continue to go backwards in terms of covering the same percentage today with our fees versus cost of service and find up ourselves in a big hole next year, the next year, and the next year, because I can guarantee you that cost of service is going to go up.
And we get into the argument of subsidizing by the taxpayer.
Yes, sir. That's my issue is.
Type 2 ALS is most expensive. That's it. Our proposed fee is 53% of cost of service. Our type 1 67%, and our BLS is 73%. And
Those would be large increases too, Lane. That ALS 1 would be a 25% increase, ALS 2 would be a 58% increase going, if we went to 80% of service, that's a big increase, but apparently your ALS 2 is not a highly used service just because you don't have that much call for that type.
That category is something such as a code where we're using all kinds of medicines and equipment to try to bring somebody back. That's probably the primary category for that runtime.
Do I have a recommendation from council in terms of what you would like to see in terms of this presentation and fee structure? Because I think, Harry?
Brenda, thank you. I'm going to go back and reiterate something you just said. The Chief alluded to it a little while ago. You bring a new station online, you put 2 more ambulances and services, then that cost of service is going to go up every year. To Tommy's point, if we try to find a way to get to 80% this year, 90 next, and 100 the following year, we're always going to be chasing a target. But we've got to get to a spot, even if this is not used on a regular basis, where the city recovers a majority of the monies needed for this cost of service. So, as much as it pains me, I think we should really try to get to an 80% for every one of this particular time frame today, and look at what we can do in the future years. Because I think we're going to chase that target for longer than I'm going to be on this council.
Yes, do I have other comments from anyone on council? Tina, do you want to bring something to us?
Yes, we just did some quick math at 75% of cost of service, if you all would like to hear what those numbers would be.
Please.
Okay.
Start with the first one, please.
Will you do the slides with the first one? Okay. So on this first slide, at 75% of cost, the proposed fee would be $978. The next slide, at 75% of cost, would be $1,416. For BLS emergency, 75% would be $825. BLS non-emergency, 75% would actually be a bit of a decrease to $515. $515.
That doesn't make sense.
That's not right. Your current fee is $770.
Hold on.
You're in the wrong
Oh,
slide.
you're on the wrong.
Yeah.
I know. I'm on the
Those
BLS
calculators, what can you say about them? They're always wrong.
There we go. This is the one that would decrease a bit to $515. Next, the mileage fee, 75% would be $12.39. The transfer out of city, still in county. Oh, we didn't calculate that one.
That when the proposed fee is higher than the cost of
Proposed
service.
fee's higher than your cost of service there.
Okay, it would be $155 on that one.
But wait a minute, the proposed, it can't be.
The cost of service would be $155. That's an error, I believe is what she's saying.
The actual cost of service is $155,
ma'am.
not $139.
Oh, that was
Yes.
old data.
Okay. And so the 75% would be what? 75% of 155 is what?
Let me calculate that, please. I'm sorry. 116.25. For this one, the 75% cost of service would be $189. Finally, on this one, the 75% would be $301.50.
Let me ask you a question that we talked about last time. When we talk about these fees, A lot of these fees are covered by insurance, correct?
A lot of what?
Most of these fees, if someone has an insurance policy, a lot of their insurance policy would cover these fees.
If they have insurance, yes, ma'am.
So,
Other than the standby services, that's the football games, the rodeo, the things that people contract with us for. So those are known costs to us.
okay. So with the new statistics that Tina presented, which would be raising the fees to 75% of actual cost of service, do I have a motion to pass a 75% of actual cost of service fees?
May I clarify one
Yes.
thing first? In the event that that would actually lower the fee to less than the cost of service, would you propose something different? For example, on,
This one, for example, standby
Well,
services.
while she's
For
looking
example,
it up,
this one, yes.
Mayor, the 75% threshold affected in a positive way the first 3 fees. The rest, it all brought the fee down or had small impact.
So what I'm hearing from the council is you would like to take 75% as the new proposed fee on ambulance services only, and we would leave the rest of the services at the fees that are currently proposed. Is that what I'm hearing from council? Then would somebody like to make that motion?
is that including this basic life support non-emergency? Because I believe that's an ambulance service, but it would actually decrease our fee at 75%.
Let's go back to the very beginning.
So these first 3,
So the type 1, we would raise to 75% of cost of service.
yes, ma'am.
That would be $978.
Yes,
You've got them
yes.
there. Okay.
Which is the most used?
Type 2, emergency, would be 75% of the $1,889.
Which is $1,416.
Okay. The
Sorry, I
next
didn't
one,
hear you. What did you say?
$1,416.
we could round that to $1,420. The other one, the first one, to $980. No, we won't, because then 75% doesn't apply. Forget I ever said that. The next one,
The next one would be $825 at 75%. And that is
No.
this one right here.
okay. So let's go back to the first one.
Okay.
So what we're going to ask for first is a motion to approve 75% of the type 1 emergency, the type 2 emergency, basic life support emergency of 75%, and 75% of the basic life support
That would
non-emergency.
decrease
It would
this
decrease.
fee.
So we would not. So the first 3 slides would go to 75%. The balance of the slides would be as presented. Is that correct? Is there a motion for that? The motion would be that in slides 1 through 3, or
1 through 3, that's correct.
1 through 3 would be 75% of proposed of cost of service. The balance of the slides would be as presented.
Then, do you mind if I clarify the
If
motion?
you would go ahead, please.
Motion would be to approve as presented with the exception of moving the ALS 1 fee to 75% of cost, the ALS 2 fee to 75% of cost, and the BLS fee to 75%, or emergency fee to 75% of cost.
Do I have a motion?
Approve.
Is there a second? Second. Is there comment from the audience, please?
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Brian and Teresa, does that need to specify 75% of cost, or do we need to put a number on it so that we're not forever
As
calculating?
presented at 75% of cost, so it was the cost that was presented.
Okay. So the ordinance will read a specific number.
Yes, in the second reading, it'll come back with the specific information.
All right, thank you.
With no public comment?
This is the second reading, so yes, it'll be 75% of the cost that was presented.
Okay. It's continuing annually.
And then we would review on an annual basis with new information relative to cost of service to determine proposed fees. So the motion as presented, do all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes 7-0.
Public comment, you might want to.
Oh, I did ask for public
did.
comment
She did.
already.
She did.
I did.
She did, okay.
Yep. With that, we move into our closed session. When?
Teresa, I'm hearing no closed session, but you have an item or? No, we don't have a closed, no, we're good, Mayor.
Okay, there's no closed session today. So the one is listed on the agenda we are not discussing today.
That's correct. It was
Okay.
simply an update that we can push.
Okay. With that, we'll move to item 8, follow-up and administrative issues. There was no executive session, so we don't need to do that. B is consider approving various board nominations. The first is the Design and Historic Review Commission, Connie Biggerstaff, my appointee to a first term ending September 2009. Do I have a yes,
Mayor,
Brian?
you can take all these together if it helps.
I have been asked to do them separately.
okay.
So with that, do I have a motion to approve Connie Biggerstaff to the Design and Historic Review Commission?
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Item B, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Francis Hollensberger as a mayor to a third term ending December 2009.
Move approval.
And may I just ask that moving forward, we make sure we don't nominate someone to a term unless it, or to a position on the commission or board without having their nomination approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Planning Commission, Travis Stribling, SMD 5 to first full term ending January 2021.
Move to approve.
A second. Do I need to ask for public comment on these? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Public Art Commission, Julie Raymond, SMD 6 to a second term ending April 2019. A motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Our announcements and consideration for future agenda items, are there any? With none, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 10.